So firstly, thanks to Danielle for organising this conference today. Really nice to see everybody here. I do recognise some faces are new. So Jonathan was wrong. I've not been here 18 months. I've been here 11.
So, it feels like 18.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster. It's been a bit of a get in the door and run, like just roll with it. So Danielle's only 2 days a week, so I just had to email all the volunteers recently and remind them of that. So thanks, Danielle, setting this up with your 2 days a week. You've done a great job bringing this all together today. And then so I am full-time, and it's great having like 5 days a week for this, but like 5 days a week is not enough because look at all this stuff. So Dragonflies on the Bog project, I was really lucky Scott turned up in January to help with that, but that's been since day one. So that's the like the NRF funded project. So that's a 2-year project. And then we've got the 100 Ponds Northern Damselfly. I'm really lucky having Stephen to help out with that in a consultancy role. So he's been kind of left with that while I'm doing Dragonflies on the Bog. And then Forestry and Land Scotland, that is a really big job, huge big estate across the country. But I've just not had any time recently, so Pat and Danielle, they've sort of been more involved in that. I'm picking up on it now. And Scotland Volunteers, I'm in good communication with all the Scotland Volunteers. We're building sort of a band of merry folk to go out and help us. So just working on that now. And partnership working out with all these things here. We've got extra things like growing arms and legs and really good networking opportunities as they arise. So here we go, Dragonflies in the Bog. So we've already discussed this several times today, but I've done some very nice pink stars on my map just to show you the areas where we are. So again, funded by Nature Scott. We've got 10 partner organisations who signed up to 10-year agreements. So that's what I spent all my time doing, really, is running about all these partners and saying, please sign up for 10 years to look after these dragonfly pools. So we have agreed to monitor them, which is why we really need the volunteers, because we can't do it all ourselves. And we're hoping to get more funding, obviously, and then between all these pink stars, keep working away, habitat connectivity, join them all up. And these species that we're working on, it's the azure hawker, northern emerald, and white-faced darter. They all tend to be in the Northwest Highlands, so that's why everything's sort of gravitating that way. So there we go. So we've talked about Crower already, but I'm going to just do it again. So just my involvement. So I'm glad Pat's stats rang with mine. So I had 23,000 hectares of an estate. Approximately 30% of it is blanket bog, which is under restoration actively at the moment and has been for several years. Native woodland, so they're doing native afforestation as well. So these two things are really important for these species. So as Pat has already spoken about, is the northern emerald and the azure hawker rely on the woodland, sort of being on the periphery, even though like 3 kilometres away at Crower, but they still sort of rely on the woodland. So it's very important what's happening at Crower, and I've put the peatland action here at the bottom. So Stephen's already talked about that. So Crower is working with them and Forestry Land Scotland. So they're doing the revegetating, rewetting and reprofiling of their open peat hags to restore the peatland, the open peatland. But they're also undertaking forest to bog, where you're felling the trees and returning it back to the bog it was before the commercial forestry went on. So here we go. So we are not doing peatland restoration. We are just a tiny little organisation making tiny little dragonfly pools, but we do actually look at the peatland code. Stephen has had some involvement in that, in getting the forest to bog, sort of the peatland manual, to incorporate putting in dragonfly pools before they retreat and leave a site, because it just makes lots of sense. So I've put a picture of our version of, peatland restoration here. This is effectively what we're doing. Think about that huge expanse that Pat talked about, Crower, they're restoring their bog. It's a huge operation across Scotland. It's a massive operation. When you think about what we're doing, it's absolutely tiny, and our pools are tiny in relation to all this. But yeah, we're adopting a lot of the same principles, but on a smaller scale. So you'll see on, I'll try and point, yeah, this D2. So Scott had like blue dots around there. That's my fault. I'd put in on the map in the files that he's used. There was just dots there, but this area is where we did a bit of freestyle pools. So all these kind of green sort of dots, these are the markers that me and Pat went out and said, right, these are good points. Pool complexes is what we were saying. These are not going to be individual pools. These are just points to start thinking about features to dam up or whatever to wet up the area and create a complex of pools. So what we said, once our digger driver was competent enough, basically he got carte blanche to go in here himself, and he's done a wonderful job. So actually within there, Scott's one had loads of little dots, blue dots. This is full of little blue dots here. So as well, we were talking about degraded peat, so we were not to go below, see this line, like where our yellow and orange lines are. We weren't to go below there because it's degraded peat, but there's also Schedule 1 nesting birds on there. So black-throated divers, like we don't need to be doing disturbance. But you can see all the peat hags, open erosion gullies. We don't want to be messing with that. That's too big for us. Our pools are tiny. You know, they're like skinny, few meters wide, few meters long. So we just concentrate in this kind of areas. So we were handed approximately 20 hectares roughly of the less degraded peat to work in to create the pools, because we're not going in actually digging brand new pools. We're actually looking, as Pat said, the topography, and we're looking at where was there pools a few years ago and how do we reinstate them, you know, with minimal disturbance. So that's the way we're operating. Kind of leave no trace, do the best we can. So this is the kind of thing we were faced with. It's like, where do you start? So Sarah Watts, the ecologist at Carrower Estate, she granted us, you know, that 20 hectare area and said, work away, do what you want. Oh yeah, and to go back here, and then there's those 27 pools that Pat and Danielle had put in 2023. So this is why this area was given over, because all the species were known to be in there. So it makes sense, you know, to work in within the sort of zone of where they're going to be breeding and flying. So you look across here and, oh man, there's just infinite possibilities. So this is just one area here, and you can just walk along there and be like, here, 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 here. You know, we could dam here, we can do this. So the type of kind of peatland it is, you know, there's like hummocks, you know, with a bit of stony stuff, and then there's, you know, there's hollows that are full of peat, and that's the way it works. So there was an awful lot of opportunity for us to do stuff in there. And then this is now Pat. So we had to come up with some sort of guidance. You don't just walk up to the contractor and try and explain it. It's very nuanced. It depends on what you find on the ground is what you're going to do, you know, to actually restore that little bit, because it's so microscopic, really, it's on a very small scale. So this is Pat had come up with this kind of guidance, you know, so we had for the 3 species through trial and error what has been discovered that they prefer. So we've got some there for the azure hawker, more shallow with the cotton grass in the middle. And then Northern Emerald, it likes deeper runnels, and Emma will tell you all about that soon enough. With lots of sphagnum mixed through, very deep sphagnum. And then we've got white-faced darter, you know, they prefer the deeper pools. And then that's what we were talking about, this studies in white-faced darter in Cumbria found that they like deeper pools, you know, so if we can get away with deeper pools, if we have enough peat to do that, we would do that. And then when we were out looking, so Pat's already touched on this. This is fascinating, this algal mats that form. It was described by the NTS ecologist as pink leather. It really is like that. It's just this cap, you know, and then it's absolute anaerobic underneath and nothing can go on. So you can have like a metre deep pool, but you've only got 5 centimetres of active habitat on top of this stuff. And we were talking about the large herbivores. Yes, it's great the deer are getting shot off and the trees are regenerating, but they used to like to wallow, you know, in the pools, and they'd break up all this stuff. So that's a little bit of a shame missing out on that. So I don't know if we've got any volunteers willing to jump in. Bog snorkeling. It would be quite good. And then there's this desiccated sphagnum. So these are all like indicators of drying up. So when Pat is looking at the landscape, she sort of figures out where they would like to be. And then you find the old pools. And that kind of tells you where to start looking for the species. And there we go. This is what we did in Carrower over the winter, just there. This is like the next load. I think this is area A. You can see here, this is like, would have been great for, you know, azure hawker, but it's getting infilled, you know, and dried up. And the more drying it does, the more vegetating it does, and you just lose it in the landscape. But you can see it's linked, you know, like there's always little links. So that's how we were thinking along the lines of complexes of pools, instead of just we'll build a pool, you know, like we'll actually create a little network of pools. So then here we go, that's nice. So you would think, oh, nice little runnel here full of sphagnum, but it goes on and on and on. So you could do some damming here. So I was very technical, you know, going around with my bits of tape and writing my suggestions for the contractor on it, see what he thinks. But he's a peatland contractor, he does peatland restoration, he knows what he's doing as well. So between us all, we figured it out. And I paid a very, very good artist a big commission to do this. You're looking at her. So that is to try and explain to people, you know, like what we were just looking at there, you know, you're looking at the ground and you're trying to figure out, okay, what way is the water flowing? You know, where's it getting fed from and where's it going to go? And if we do this, what happens? So then you have to think about it like this. So these would have been pools, you know, at some point in the past. And these are now the little remnants that have dried up, but they still are holding habitat. So what can we do to increase that? So we're figuring out, okay, the water flows down here, seeps actually, seeps here, seeps here. So you can see it's all interconnected. It's just a case of standing there for ages in the cold figuring this out. And then, now this is not technically well measured out or anything. Beautiful artwork though. So like you can see where you might put a dam, you know, to actually block the water. And then where I've said an island appears, that's just the contours of the land. So, you know, like the land is not all flat. So where it sticks up, where the water backs up. So all my blue dots, that's like where the water's backing up because of the dams. Then islands will appear. And yes, they don't like the islands. It's not a big enough island for a duck to want to go and nest on it. So we're fine that way. It's not like the northern damselfly. This is very small scale. This will be like maybe 2 meters wide here. You know, it's actually very, very small. It's all very microscopic. And what we're calling a sump, so it's like in your engine, a sump. So we were calling these sumps, and what it is, it's drought resistant, you know, refuges. So it was dig down a meter and maybe make a meter or a meter too wide. Some of them were 60 to 80 centimeters, some of them were a meter. And it's just so we're going to see it now over the next summer. Hopefully we get a nice cozy summer. We can go back and check it out and see they're all noted down where they are. So we can actually go and see, are these things working? You know, we can check the dams as well. So that's just a way of trying to explain what we're doing on the ground when we're looking at it. Again, we come back to this manual. So this is a way of trying to explain, you know, to the digger driver. They know what they're doing though, because they deal with this. So you would take from a borrow pit, like you'd fold the bits of the ditch down, take from a borrow pit over here, the black peat, you know, and pack it in here, and then you re-turf the top. So you just don't know that you're walking on top of a dam until you're actually sinking. You know, it's covered up so well by the digger driver. And do note that it says, you know, they're constructed by low ground pressure excavator and more rarely by hand. So at Carrera, luckily, we were allowed an excavator on. And here is the master himself. This is Sam, he's from GS Campbell, and he is doing like peatland restoration work as well. So it was great trying to convey to him what me and Pat were trying to think and try and get it into his head. But this guy was amazing. He took all this writing, all this paperwork we landed him with, our annoying explanation over and over again, walking out on site meeting. He got the hang of it beautifully. So we were able to let him just go carte blanche on that area D I showed you earlier. And he did a great job. He reads the peat better than we can, to be honest. And there's another example of my technical instructions for him. You know, just write on a little cane down here, and then he figures it out. Yeah, he was really good. So I gave him a coaster with a as a gift for the dragonfly on it, as a thank you for all his hard work, made out of recycled oak floorboards as well. Right, so here's an example of some of his work. You know, you can see all the different habitats here. So the first pools in 2023 were wider and deeper and a bit more severe. So we did a bit more light touch here. So we've got like more shallow stuff. So I was apologizing to Pat about the shallow stuff, and she's saying, no, that's really good because that's immediate habitat now. We don't need to wait for it to kind of bed in, and you know, that can be ready to use this year, you know, and it will dry out eventually. And then we've got deeper ones, you know, created by dams, you know, and everything wetting up, you know. So he just slammed in a load of dams. So we're going to go back and survey it. So here are the stats now. So Sam did a great job. So we have a total of 129 pools, but we're saying pools, these are just, and they're not newly created, they're formed, you know, so some, they would have been there already, just this tinkering and damming gave you this finite amount of, you know, you can actually say defined pools, but some of them were there already, we just added, you know, numbers onto it. So it's complexes of pools really, and that's how many dams it took to do it. And these sumps, you know, like half of them are a metre deep and half of them are 60 to 80 centimetres deep. So we'll see how they perform. And then we had our second dig this winter that was absolutely a different story. We didn't have a digger. We didn't have tons of deep peat. We had, this was up by Shieldy. So this was Floridian sandstone that we were on. So yeah, Scott's already talked about it and shown you the pictures. So it was really, we were only allowed to dig under the power lines. We were not allowed an excavator. So we had to find somebody to hand dig. That's very hard. Nobody wants that job. So it was touch and go whether it was getting done. And eventually we found a very good contractor who does this already. So they knew what they were in for. And these guys here that own this bit of land, you know, they are very open to trying stuff. So they weren't expecting us to have 100% brilliant dams that are going to work. And when they're built by hand, as Scott said, you know, they don't have the compression. So we're just seeing what happens basically. So here's Graham Rennie here, who knows the site very, very well. A lot of hours spent assessing where would be best because Graham knows exactly where the species are. These were the two main species, although Northern Emeralds are there as well. But these are the ones, the pools that we ultimately made for. Here we've got the electric guys had to come out because we were digging under the power poles, even though we didn't have buckets and excavators, you know, going to hit the lines. We had to make sure it was safe underneath. And here's me sealing the deal with the owners, Richard and Claire. Let us do it. And this was the contract brief. So can you imagine being a contractor? You know, you're getting do this, no doing that, you know, that was kind of hard work. So yeah, Crower was 400 meters above sea level. This was only 90 meters above sea level. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 pools. We decided against doing number 4 because it was going to be too time consuming and it wouldn't have been worth it. Again, just to remind you what these guys had to try and do by hand, that it's a lot easier with a machine. So that's why it says more rarely by hand, because it's not an easy job, but they did a really good job. So this was them getting ready for their hand digging. And again, this is kind of the teaspoon concept is how this felt, because these guys going in there having to dig this peat with these little hand tools, and they had a good attitude the whole time. They were really, really good. They did a great job. So here we go. There's pool 1. So this was when they started. So it was a decent enough pool. But what we were looking at was, see this line here, bring it all back, you know, dig all this grassy mat out and just widen it. And all they could do, it was full of that sludge, degraded stuff, you know, it's sediment. So just dig that out the best you can. So you can see that they did that, but they didn't leave the site like that. They took this away and hid it, you know, in little hollows under these trees there. So that was a good one. That worked well. And I put a big, huge dam on this end because the water flows from up there down this way. So we'll see how that holds. That was a hand. There you go. That's the dam there. Quite a lot of work went into that. Oh no, this is pool number 2. Yeah, so like we put a dam on there because the water flows this way, and then there was 2 more little channels here that they blocked up, and we went in and pulled out grassy islands, you know, just to widen it. There's not much more you can do, but this was Pat's pool then, because Pat was very concerned about getting one white-faced darter pool, but we knew it was shallow peat here, but this one was 100 centimeters, so that was good. So we had one for white-faced darter here. So I was very pleased with that. And there's my rubbish photographs. So here's the white-faced darter larvae, and you can see, you can make out just the yellow eyes, and then the stripey on the underside as well. So that was great being able to show the contractors, you know, this is what you're working for. And they were very, very interested in it. And they were happy. And here we go. I've not even processed these photos out my camera. I just said I better find something to put in this talk. So yeah, this is them on pool number 3. This was the very last pool. So poor guys, because like really it's a big rocky wet flush, you know, that goes along here. It's not a skinny channel, easy to block. So all they're doing, they're just building, they're digging this out of the hillside here. They covered that up beautifully, got this black peat in and just built a dam the best they could. But it's going to creep, you know, around the sides, but we're slowing the flow because this site actually does hold water. It was kind of good when we were there already, but what we're doing is just increasing, you know, the volume of the water to create habitat for a bit longer than was going to be if we weren't there. So we'll just monitor that, but look at their happy smiley faces so they can come again. And then, so yeah, pool 3. So that started wetting up. This is where you just saw them standing in there. So this was all starting to wet up on day 3. It was only a 3-day dig. And then what we did, there was pools that were drying up, so we went away and collected sphagnum from the pools that are likely to dry, took healthy sphagnum and just distributed it round the 3 pools. So they were very good, and they just worked so many hours and they were happy right up to the end, or pretended to be. And then pool 4, yeah, we didn't bother with that because it was just a lot of hard work. Then the other thing I'm involved in, so Stephen's talked about this one, we're held up by planning at the moment, but Lorna Slater, the MSP who spoke at the start, she's helping us if we need it, you know, so that's very good of her because she's the species champion. And I just like the Cairngorms National Park, this is one of their priority species. They've got about 60 priority species, 30 of them are invertebrates. And I just thought, look at the names of these: northern silver stiletto fly and a shining guest ant. So it makes like northern damselfly sound quite boring. Like he's done quite well to get funding, you know, to help him. So yeah, that's a 3-year project, and we're funded by BMW this year. And then, yeah, so the next news is, well, Forestry and Land Scotland, that's the next thing I have to get into because it's a huge estate. And it's got loads of rare species all over it. So Danielle had got a partnership agreement that ran out this year, and there's been so much work done with so many volunteers and the staff at FLS building new ponds. There's a lot of work been going on. And then here we go. So here we go. This is stolen from Danielle's presentation. Credit to Danielle. So it's just to show you the different areas, you know, and the different bits of the estate of FLS and the species that we're working to preserve there. So I've got a lot of touring to do, as Danielle did back in the day, and go and meet all the forests, you know, the conservation managers, because they'll all have changed since Danielle was doing that, you know. So we're going to find out what no money they've got, and see if they can help us. And then this is another area we're going to be working in because our dragonflies on the bog. This is not the FLS land, but it's neighbouring to Glen Affric. So we've got rare species on there. So what I've done, I've just overlaid my nice big pink stars again for dragons on the bog. And to show you the crossover there. So we've got all the FLS estate in the, you know, the white boxes. And then we've got the northern damselfly operating in the east. And then we've got all of our dragons on the bog stuff on the west. So it could all complement each other if we get it right. And then again, Central Scotland, and then I've put a green star because we have a talk soon about a mystery project in the central area. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. And then breaking news, you guys get the news today. Like, this is not out in the press yet. Press release on Monday. Me and Danielle just went and met Colin Edwards from Forestry and Land Scotland. He's the conservation manager, and we managed to talk him into another agreement. So we managed to get it for 5 years, and that's in line with the Scottish Biodiversity Strategy and the Scottish Biodiversity Strategy Delivery Plan, and then we'll reassess it. So that way they give us a bit of funding each year. And the other thing he's going to look into is, under all the peatland restoration stuff, can they find some funding for when they're doing forest to bog? You know, and can we get help that way and work with them on that? So that's a really, really good bit of news. Very happy about that.
Sounds around before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big win. And Danielle won it though. She came with her larvae, you know, showing Colin, and he was like, wow, yeah, I'm yours. And then, so partnership working. So you've already heard Genevieve's talk. So what's happening here? I think we're going to link up with these guys to do with white-faced darter and northern emerald, because under the 100 Ponds project, we've just agreed to pay her to do a survey from Lake and Bowie down to where Stephen and I are working at the Downtown on Spey kind of Speyside area, and that'll link into our work there. And then we also have Sam Buckland from the Durrell Trust here, who have just brought, was it Dalnacardoch Estate, which is in the Cairngorms National Park. It's in the southwest. So we've got a visit coming up to go and look at there to get baseline survey done, see what species they've got, because they're starting from ground zero basically there. So that's another really interesting bit of work and a good partnership we might have coming up. So, and there we go. This is what we have for everybody who's interested in coming along. All we're asking though, if you want to come on these training courses, you need to sign up to help us do the surveying. You know, like, we really, really need people to help us. So it's all, the accommodation's all paid for. And we might even stretch to buying you like lunch. So hopefully that'll work out. But the other thing, so we have, Danielle's already spoke about it. really, really soon, Northern Damselfly ID and survey training, and then sign up to do surveys. So that's free. Was it the Aviemore Youth Hostel?
Right, and I've more youth lost on the Friday and then the training days on the Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's coming up. So everybody welcome there. There's places left. I've just had two places drop off for the Crower training on May, like weekdays, sorry, but it's at the Loch Ossian Youth Hostel on the estate. So that was very hard to get. So I just had to take weekdays. But we've had two people drop out. So there's two places left because it was fully booked otherwise. So if anybody wants to come, please, and just spread the word because I want to fill those places. They're already bought and paid for.
People could possibly come for the day though, because you can catch the train.
Oh, they
The
can
morning
definitely
train
come.
gets
Yeah,
them in around-
yeah.
around At lunchtime, I think about 6-7 o'clock. So if there's anyone that's interested.
Yeah.
and
Luigi's
like to come
doing
for the
that. Yeah,
day, just
Luigi's
get in
coming for the
touch.
day. Yeah. But if anybody knows of anybody, then there's two spaces definitely free there. And then again, Dragonflies on the Bog. So July, we've got 2 loads of it. But what we are suffering from is lack of photographs of good quality for our promotional materials. We really need to get good photographs. So we're going to actually have a photography 2-day workshop. So this one here at the end of July, we're staying in Roy Bridge and getting the train into Crower, same as the start of July. But this one's going to be a 4-day one, so 2 days of training, you know, for the species, and then 2 days will be photography workshop because we just want everybody to take loads of photographs. So bring your fancy camera, and somebody is going to be training you with a fancy camera, or even just with a phone camera, just whatever. But we're going to try and get really nice photographs of the rare species because we just don't have a lot of pictures of them. And it would be really nice if you sign up to be a surveyor that you're able to take a good photograph as well. That'd be really good. And I need the training in that. My photographs are bad. So we're going to be doing that. And then we'll probably on the Sunday just go out to Glenroy National Nature Reserve instead of the 4th day at Crower. Just go somewhere different. And again, August, that's Glencoe, Dragonflies on the Bog. And then we're going to set up for the 100 Ponds project, lots of survey, as much survey and identification training as we can around Speyside and Deeside. So just get in touch, and then we'll be advertising them, but yeah, just like sign up nearer the time. But these are dates for your diary anyway. And just a huge thank you, actually, Pat. Thank you so much. Pat has put in, as Scott said, countless hours, and Pat has been really mentored me through everything. Because how am I meant to know her 40 years experience all of a sudden, 11 months in the door, 1 month in the door? So Pat has been invaluable, and Graham as well, putting us up and putting up with us. So thank you very much, and thanks to everybody, Danielle, Scott, Tim, Coleslaw as well. Coleslaw, keep saying that, Coleslaw. Trustee. And there you go. That's me. I'm in times.